Hi, in this short tutorial I'll take you down on a brief introduction to web development. So before we start, I want you to recognize the difference between web development, app development, and software development. So when you build softwares, you're building it mostly for things like the PC, the Mac, and Ubuntu servers or something like that. But when you're building apps, you're building mostly software for mobile phones, iOS devices, things like that. But when you're building um, web, when you're a web developer, you're actually building tools that will be used for the web. So you can check out my Twitter handle. It's @Banjohi, and you can also check out my portfolio. This is the link. um, I think we should start on what web development is actually about. So, web development is the art of developing applications that are used on the internet to serve users in different ways. So, there are two types of web developers. There are front-end developers, there are back-end developers, and then there are this mix of developers called full-stack developers. So, the front-end developers actually create the visual layouts. Um, Whatever you see on the browser is created by a front-end developer. So that includes the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, things like jQuery and stuff, any other frameworks that they may choose to add, things like Bootstrap. So those are things that you learn later if you choose to become either a front-end developer or a back-end developer. Now, a back-end developer is someone who builds the server logic. For instance, when you click that like button on Facebook, what happens on the back? What happens when you like that button happens on the back end. But that like button has been created by a front-end developer. But what actually happens, the logic happens on the back end. So tools and development languages that are used on the back end mostly are Node.js, PHP, Python, Ruby, Go, SQL, and there are a bunch of there are others. There are so many more. So full stack developers can do both front end and back end developers. These are kind of like a mixture of both. So what is the front end and the back end? The front end is the client, which is most likely a mobile device, a computer, which has a browser. So the client can also be an application, a mobile app, like let's say a Facebook app. But then that takes you to an app developer. So the client for web developers is actually the browser. Okay, so the browser sends a request to the server. So the server, which is a computer maybe that operates on the cloud, receives the request, processes the information, and then sends back a response to um, the client who sent the request. So tools you can use to develop web applications, they're very simple. You can use default tools that come with your Windows operating system and also the Linux operating system. One of the things you might want to use is the text editor. For Windows, you might want to use Notepad. For Linux, I'm not sure because I haven't used Linux mostly, but all this software that I've listed here can be used on both um, Windows and Linux. So for the reason why you might want to get a better text editor is because text editors like Sublime Text, Visual Studio Code, Atom, Notepad Plus, and Web Matrix have features like IntelliSense, features like syntax highlighting that Notepad lack. So you might also want to upgrade your browser from the default IE browser to something like Chrome or Firefox, which I'd recommend. You might also want to take up something like Edge, Opera, or Safari if you're using a Mac. So also you might want to have your own personal computer, but if you can't afford your own computer, it's recommended for you to create your own personal account where you can put your own user settings, and it's also important for you to have an internet connection. So great places to start learning. You can check out w3schools.com where you can um, learn about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, things like that. And you can also check out Tutorials Point. They have tutorials on about everything, even games, sports, branding, marketing, all that good stuff. You can also check out Microsoft's Codeplex, free code camp. You can also check out SoloLearn or Microsoft's Channel 9. So to start you off, we'll open up the browser, and I want us to go through the browser developer tools. So here I'll be using Chrome. So to open up the developer tools, all you have to do is either press F12 on your keyboard, or open up the menu, go to more tools, and then choose developer tools. Okay, another option is you can right click and then choose inspect, and it will also open up the developer tools. Another option is you can click Control Shift I, and that will also open up the developer tools. So what is this developer tool? So this helps you a lot in your development, and you can actually visualize your elements and check out your code against whatever you're creating right here. So this is the web page, and this is your your tools here. And as you can see, we have several tabs. Let's start with the elements tab. Now everything you see on a web page is an element. So like this picture here, it's an image element. This is an input element where you get to input data. These are cards, which are div elements. So you can actually check them out here, and HTML uses this tag syntax to create elements. So when you get to creating our first HTML page, I'll get to show you how to create a very simple page. So you can play around with these web tools. You can check out the HTML on this side. You can also check out the styles on this side, and you can also use this selection tool here to select specific elements. Like let's select this element here, and then we can change the background color. Let's change it to dark black, and as you can see, the response is instant, and you can just test out things on your websites when you're developing them. Like, what if I want to pick something like a bluer color or green, something like that, how would it look? And you can just change it directly on the developer tool. So they're very helpful. So it's very helpful, and you can also use the console window. So here's where you put your JavaScript. Like if you want to alert your name, my name is Tony, and it says Tony. So you can also create functions like function say hi, and it will take up a name parameter, and then it will return hi plus the name. And now the function has been saved into the web page, and you can call the function on the console. Say let's just say hi on the console. Okay, so all we have to do is say hi, and then we need to pass in a name. Okay, let's say Wanjohi, and it says hi plus Wanjohi, the name we just passed into the function. So you can also write longer scripts on the developer tools. Like when you go to sources and open up snippets, you can create a new snippet, like something like let's call it local. Save it, and you can do several stuff. Like you can write long lines of code. You can format them, and then when you're done, all you have to do is either press Control Enter to run the code, something like console.log hi there, and then console.log me again. And then all we have to do to run this is press Control Enter, and when you check out the console it says hey there and me again. So when you're writing long lines of code, you can actually use snippets. So I've never actually used the network. Actually I don't even know what it's for. Neither have I ever used the performance, but I think it checks out the performance of your web page. I don't know against what exactly. You can also use memory, taking heap snapshots. I don't know what that is, but you can research on your own, because I've never had the opportunity to use this, so I really don't know what this is. Let's go to application. Now this is where things get interesting. Let's close this up. Now the manifest, when you get to the application, this is when we start to build progressive web apps. Now we'll move from building just websites to web apps. Now web apps have more functionality than websites, because web apps have this app manifest that can carry an icon, can carry links, can carry what else can it carry? The name. It's like it basically becomes like a native application, and it can access things like the camera, the location, the microphone, um, a bunch of stuff. I think you can actually see all the things that a web app can access when you go to your settings. And was it here really, or was it on the settings of the website? Let's go back, and I can't remember exactly where it was, but I think if you're on a website and then you tap on the settings page here or something, it will tell you all the permissions that the website requires. Okay, so the app manifest carries that information. If your application will require to use the camera, if your application will require to use the local storage, stuff like that. So we have service workers. You can actually check out your service workers using this tab here. You can clear the storage. You can see the amount of storage that this particular website has used, and you can see here that we have local storage, session storage, IndexedDB, and WebSQL. So you can actually access all this using when you're making a web app. But you can actually just access it like really easily. Like for instance, let's just add a username to our our local storage here. So let's go back to the console. All you have to do is do something like window dot local storage set item username, and we'll set the username to Wanjohi, and then enter, and it says undefined. But if you go back to the application, you can see that we have a new key here, username, and the value is Wanjohi. So you can actually save data on your browser from maybe, let's say, a website. Like for instance, if you're creating a chat application and you need to save your chats, you can actually save them on the local storage. You can save them on the IndexedDB, or you can save them on WebSQL. Now as you move on further, I'll show you guys how to actually do all this stuff when we get to web apps. So right now, this is the introduction. I'm just showing you how to go through this stuff and where to find them. I think that's almost the last thing, because security and audits, I've never really used them. Application, we've already checked that out. Those two, I've never used them. So those are the that's the developer tools in a nutshell. Let's actually now just create our first simple website. Okay, so we're going to open up the command prompt, and then we're going to go to the folder where we actually write our code, and we're going to create a new directory. So we're going to do an md, let's call it web development, and then cd into web development. Now if you've installed something like Visual Studio Code, you can just open up the folder, you can open up this folder on your Visual Studio Code by this command. Make sure that when you are installing that you add the path to the environment variables, okay, so that the command code can be added to the environment variables. When you just type in code, it's recognized that you're running commands for Visual Studio Code. So when you type in code and then a dot, it will actually open up the folder. Okay, so right now we don't have anything. Let's create our first page. So first thing we create is the doc type, and as you can see, Visual Studio Code is intelligent enough to realize what I was about to write. So it would have just, if I press tab, it will just fill out everything for me. So let's go through what we've just written. So this is the HTML opening tag. We open up our HTML document here and close it in here, and anything within that tag is in fact, those are elements in a HTML document. So all of this is treated as a HTML document. Now we've specified that our language will be English, and we have two main elements, which is the head and the body. Now the body carries whatever you see. These are the buttons, the input elements, the images, and the head carries anything that you don't see. So these are kind of like the settings of the page, or the information about the page, the meta information, the title, like let's say the title here. This is what will be displayed here. Okay, and then you can actually create the icon, and you can even reference it, and then the icon will appear next to it. So let's change the title of this page to read simple page, and then let's create our first heading. Welcome to simple site. Let's just call it simple site. Then let's have a paragraph. Hi, I am a paragraph. Save that. Now this is an actual web page. Okay, now to run this, there are a couple of ways you can do this. Now let's just go to let's open up the Explorer where our index page is. You can just double click it to open it up on Chrome, and it says welcome to simple site. Hi, I am a paragraph. So this is really simple to create a web page, and then you can learn how to create your own styles and everything, and then you can actually inspect it. You can see the head, and you can see the body. Now in the element style, you can see that there's nothing because you haven't defined any styles. So let's just do that real quick, and I'll show you different ways how to add your styles. So you can just do a style property, okay, and then you can add your styles in the middle here. So let's give something like our paragraph let's give a paragraph something like font size 50 pixels. Let's see what happens, and suddenly our paragraph becomes big. Now let's make our font style. Let's change the font style. So as you can see, the star, this asterisk, this actually selects all the elements. Oh, before, let me just explain what this is. So this is the selector. This selects all elements that have the p tag. So if I create another p element, another paragraph, let's say second paragraph. So this style here will select every element that is the p element, like the paragraph element. So this asterisk signifies that it should select all elements, and then change the font family to Sugoi UI Light. Let's see what that will do. You see our font has changed, and we have our first paragraph and second paragraph bigger. So you can actually play around with the element, with the styles. So you can come here and change, like, let's say, the background. Something like blue, and as you can see, it changes instantly. You can also change the color of the text to something like white for better visibility, whatever you like. So this is our very first simple site. Now let's play around with the JavaScript a little. So let's say we want to create a script file, a script. So all you have to do is that, and then let's say document get element by ID. Let's give this an ID first before we actually query for it. So this will be of ID header. Let's go with the header, and header. Now we want to get this element and then put it in a variable called header. So we've selected this element, and then we've put it in a variable called header. So whatever we want to do, whatever functions we want to do, we can just do it on the variable instead, because it's already an instance of whatever we've queried. So all you have to do now is header add event listener, because you want to listen for an event. The event you want to listen to is click. Okay, so when that is clicked, what do we want to do? We want to initiate a function that will alert the user that header has been clicked. Okay, now let's see if that runs. Now let's click on header, and it doesn't work. Let's try something out. Now, I hope you've understood what I just did. So when I created the script file on before I created the header, when the HTML passes the HTML document, it actually begins from the top. So when I've queried for this element with the ID header, what has happened is the parser does not find the element because it hasn't been created by the HTML yet. So when you're creating JavaScript that will actually reference the DOM elements, it's important for you to actually put all the script after the body tag. Okay, so all your scripts should be referenced after the body tag, because if you reference it, if you add them before, the elements would have been created when the JavaScript is actually calling for them. Okay, so that's something very important for you to remember. So that's a simple website. What else can I show you? JavaScript. This is a little bit of JavaScript. This is mostly the front end. So I'm not sure if we should dive into the back end, because that actually is a little bit more intense. So if you want to learn the back end, because it's actually more of preference, so you can check out my Node.js tutorial. It should be out by now. You can. I'm also thinking of making a PHP tutorial.